The Galactic Council chamber had been built to intimidate. It hung in space above the neutral world of Covenant Prime, a massive ring structure where representatives from 200 species gathered to debate matters of interstellar importance. Jiwoo had seen it in documentaries, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of standing in its center, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, all of them staring at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "This is a waste of the Council's time," Matriarch Sulvara declared from the Veltharan delegation's platform. The supreme leader of the Veltharan hierarchy was ancient even by her species' standards, her scales dulled to almost white with age. "We are being asked to believe that humans, a species that barely left their homeworld 500 years ago, are somehow the mythical first ones. It is absurd." Ambassador Salar stood beside Jiwoo, her scales flickering with nervous green patterns. "Matriarch, I understand your skepticism, but I have witnessed what this human can do. She speaks our ancient tongue perfectly. She has translated texts that our greatest scholars have struggled with for generations." "Parlor tricks," Sulvara spat. "She could have learned the language through any number of means. Neural implants, genetic modification, or perhaps she is simply a savant, a genetic accident. None of this proves her wild claims about human history." "Then perhaps this will interest you," Junho said, stepping forward. The human xenoanthropologist activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. "Over the past month, my team has been investigating archaeological sites across 43 worlds. All of them show evidence of human presence dating back between 150 and 200,000 years. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions in a dozen languages. The Krithik delegate, a massive insectoid named Envoy Krax, clicked his mandibles loudly to get attention. "The Krithik Collective has independently verified these claims," Krax announced, his translated voice buzzing through the chamber's speakers. "Our homeworld contains ruins that we have always attributed to unknown aliens. Recent analysis shows human genetic material in the construction materials, human tools, even human remains, all dated to 180,000 years ago." "This changes nothing," Sulvara insisted, though her voice had lost some of its certainty. "Even if humans were somehow spacefaring that long ago, it does not make them the first ones of Veltharan legend. Our faith, our entire civilization is built on the belief that the first ones gave us the gift of consciousness, that they raised us from animals to sentient beings. What if they did?" Jiwoo said quietly. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her. "What if that is exactly what they did?" Jiwoo continued, her voice growing stronger. "The memories I recovered from the crystal, they show ancient humans traveling to primitive worlds, studying the native species, and in some cases carefully modifying them, accelerating their evolution, giving them the genetic potential for intelligence and language." She looked directly at Sulvara. "Matriarch, your people were not wrong about the first ones, you just did not know they were human." "Lies," Sulvara hissed. "You blaspheme against everything we hold sacred. I speak the truth." Jiwoo switched to the god tongue, the ancient language flowing from her lips like water. She recited the creation story from Veltharan holy texts, the one that described how the first ones had found the early Veltharans living as simple reptiles in the swamps, and had granted them the gift of intelligence. But she spoke it in the original language, with nuances and meanings that had been lost over millennia. Sulvara's scales went from white to pure silver, the color of shock. "How do you know those words?" "Those exact words? They are from the most sacred texts, verses that only the highest priests are allowed to see, and you speak them with perfect pronunciation, perfect understanding. It is impossible unless I learned them from the people who wrote them originally," Jiwoo finished, "unless I carry their memories in my genetics waiting to be awakened." Priest Calveth stood from where he had been sitting with the Veltharan delegation. He looked old and tired, his faith clearly shaken by everything he had witnessed over the past weeks. "Matriarch Sulvara, I have spent my life in service to the first ones. I have studied the sacred texts until I could recite them in my sleep. And I tell you now, this human speaks truth. Not human truth, not political truth, but the truth of the cosmos itself." "You are a traitor," Sulvara said coldly. "I am a seeker of truth," Calveth replied. "And the truth is that we have been wrong about many things, but not about the first one's love for us. They did raise us up, They did gift us with consciousness. We simply did not know they were human when they did it. Before Sulvara could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the council chamber. Sungmin, the human communications officer, looked up from her console in panic. Commander Yunseo, I am picking up multiple energy signatures. Someone is powering weapons. Get down! Hyunwoo shouted. The explosion tore through the human delegation's platform. Jiwoo felt Hyunwoo tackle her, his body shielding hers as debris rained down. She heard screaming, smelled burning metal and flesh. When she looked up, she saw figures in combat armor rushing into the chamber, their weapons firing indiscriminately. Zealots, Salar shouted, pulling Sulvara behind cover. Belteran fundamentalist. They believe humans are demons who have come to destroy our faith. Calveth moved faster than Jiwoo would have thought possible for someone his age. He interposed himself between Jiwoo and the attackers, his ceremonial staff raised like a weapon. You will not harm her, he said, his voice full of authority. She is an abomination, one of the zealots snarled. She speaks with a forked tongue, twisting our sacred language to serve her lies. She speaks the truth, Calveth said calmly. And truth is never an abomination, no matter how uncomfortable it makes us. Council security forces arrived then, armored beings from a dozen species pouring into the chamber. The firefight was brief but intense. When it ended, 3 zealots lay dead and 2 more were in custody. But the damage had been done. 5 delegates were wounded, including Envoy Krax, who had taken a blast to his thorax protecting the Krithik delegation. In the chaos that followed, it was Sulvara who spoke first. The ancient matriarch looked shaken, her scales flickering between colors as she processed everything that had happened. This cannot stand, she said. Violence in the council chambers. Attempts to murder delegates. This is not who we are. This is who we become when we are afraid, Calveth said gently. When our beliefs are challenged. When the world we thought we knew turns out to be different than we imagined. Fear makes us do terrible things. Sulvara looked at him for a long moment, then turned to Jiwoo. I am not ready to believe your claims about human history, but I am willing to investigate them. Properly, scientifically. She glanced at the bodies of the zealots being removed from the chamber, and I am willing to admit that perhaps there is more to this situation than simple human arrogance. That is all we ask, Commander Yunseo said, limping forward. She had taken shrapnel to her leg, but had refused medical attention until the situation was secure. Let us investigate together. Let us share what we learn. And let us decide as a galaxy what these discoveries mean. Agreed. Envoy Krax clicked, his translator making his pain evident despite the mechanical nature of the voice. The Krithik Collective proposes a joint expedition to the human homeworld of Earth. Let us see what evidence remains there. Let us examine human genetic codes and archaeological records. Let us find the truth, whatever it may be. One by one, the delegates agreed. Even those species who had no legends of first ones, who had evolved independently on their own worlds, recognized that something unprecedented was happening. If humans truly had walked the galaxy 200,000 years ago, if they had seeded worlds and uplifted species, then everything they thought they knew about galactic history needed to be reconsidered. As the council session finally adjourned, Jiwoo stood at the viewing window looking out at the stars. Taeyang joined her, his arm in a sling from the explosion. Do you think they will really work with us? He asked. I do not know, Jiwoo said. But I know we do not have a choice. If what I saw in the vision is true, if the Void Swarm is really returning, then we need every species working together. We need the technology my ancestors hid, and we need time to figure out how to use it. How much time do we have? Jiwoo touched the window, feeling the cold glass beneath her fingers. In her mind, she could still see those stars dying, consumed by darkness. Not enough, she whispered. We never have enough. Behind them, Priest Calveth approached slowly, leaning on his staff. I owe you an apology, he said. When I first saw you in the temple, I called you an abomination. I was wrong. You are a miracle, a gift from the first ones themselves, sent to wake us up before it is too late. I am just a person, Jiwoo said, a person who happened to touch the right crystal at the right time. No, Calveth said firmly. You are a speaker, the first in 10,000 generations, and you will not be the last. The awakening has begun, Jiwoo, for humanity and for all of us. The question now is whether we wake in time to face what is coming. The medical bay was cold and sterile. a sharp contrast to the ancient warmth of the temple. Jiwoo sat on the examination table while Bo-Ra ran another scan over her head, the soft hum of the machine filling the silence between them. "I'm telling you, there is nothing wrong with her," Bo-Ra said for the third time that day. "Brain activity is normal. Neural pathways are normal. Genetic markers are all standard human baseline. Whatever happened in that temple, it did not leave a physical trace I can find." Hajun looked up from his data screen, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "But it does not make sense. Languages do not just appear in someone's mind. There has to be a mechanism, a vector, something." Jiwoo closed her eyes as another wave of images washed over her. Ever since she had spoken those words in the temple, her dreams had been filled with strange visions. Cities of glass and light, ships moving between stars like schools of fish, and always underneath everything a sense of deep sadness, of something lost. "Maybe it is genetic memory," Bo-Ra suggested, powering down the scanner. "Some species have it. The Krithik can access certain memories from their ancestors through pheromone triggers. But humans do not have that ability," Hajun said. "We are not built that way. Maybe we do not know everything about how we are built." Bo-Ra helped Jiwoo down from the table. "You should rest. Commander Yunseo wants to try again tomorrow with the other inscriptions we photographed." Jiwoo nodded and left the medical bay, her feet carrying her automatically toward her quarters. But instead she found herself in the research lab where Taiyang was reviewing the scans of the temple walls. "Cannot sleep either?" he asked without looking up. "Every time I close my eyes I see things, places I have never been, people I have never met." She sat down beside him. "Taiyang, what if I'm going crazy?" "You are not crazy." Unexplained, yes. Impossible, maybe. But not crazy. He pulled up a new image on the screen. "Look at this." Hajun discovered something. "The temple is much older than we thought. We were dating it based on the Veltharan historical records, which put their first ones at about 50,000 years ago. But the radiocarbon dating on the organic material we found in the lower chambers tells a different story." "How different?" "Try 200,000 years." Jiwoo stared at the numbers on the screen. "That is impossible. The Veltharans did not even exist 200,000 years ago. Most current species did not." "Exactly." Taiyang leaned back in his chair. "So who built the temple? And why does their language live in your head?" Before Jiwoo could answer, there was a soft knock at the lab door. A young Veltharan stood there, his scales a nervous green color. He wore the simple robes of a scholar rather than the elaborate dress of Priest Calveth's followers. "Please, I do not mean to intrude," he said in careful common tongue. "My name is Threnix. I am a researcher with the Veltharan Historical Archive. I heard about what happened in the temple. I wanted to speak with the human who spoke the god tongue." Taiyang's hand moved toward the alarm panel, but Jiwoo stopped him. "It is all right. Come in, Threnix." The young Veltharan entered cautiously, clutching a small data device to his chest. "I could lose my position for this. Priest Calveth has forbidden any of our people from helping you. But I believe the truth is more important than politics or faith." He placed the device on the table and activated it. Holographic text appeared in the air, written in a flowing script that made Jiwoo's head ache to look at. "This is from our oldest texts," Threnix explained. "We keep them locked away because they contradict our official history. They speak of the speakers, beings who came before the first ones, beings who could communicate in any language, who knew the words that shaped reality itself." Jiwoo stared at the text, and slowly, haltingly, she began to read it aloud. The words came harder this time, like swimming against a current, but they came. Threnix's scales flashed white with shock. "You can read ancient Veltharan too? But that language evolved from the god tongue. They are related but different. How can you know both?" "I do not know," Jiwoo said, her voice shaking. "What do the texts say about these speakers?" Threnix scrolled through the document. "They say the speakers walked among the stars before any of our ancestors had lifted their heads from the ground. They say the speakers planted seeds of life on empty worlds and waited to see what would grow. They say the speakers knew a great darkness was coming, so they hid their knowledge in places where it could be found when it was needed." Hajun had joined them now, his data screen forgotten. "Are you saying these speakers were real? Not just mythology?" "I am saying our ancestors believed they were real," Threnix said carefully. "And I am saying that this human woman can speak languages that have been dead since before my species built its first city. That seems like more than coincidence." Taeyang pulled up the temple scans again, comparing them to the Veltheron texts. What if the inscriptions are not Veltheron at all? What if they are something older? Something more fundamental? A root language, Jiwoo said quietly. The words came from somewhere in her mind, rising like bubbles from deep water. A proto-tongue that all other languages descended from. If you knew it, you could understand any language. You could speak to any being. That is linguistically impossible, Ajun said. But his voice carried no conviction. For the next 6 hours, they worked through the temple photographs. Jiwoo translated inscription after inscription, her voice growing hoarse but never uncertain. The text spoke of a great journey across the stars, of worlds being prepared for life, of careful planning that spanned thousands of generations, and they spoke of Earth. Look at this passage, Thrennick said, his scales flickering with excitement. It describes a blue world with one moon, a world where the speakers came from before they walked among the stars. It gives coordinates. Hajun ran the numbers through the navigation computer. His face went pale. Those are the coordinates for Earth's solar system. Exactly. A heavy silence filled the lab. Jiwoo felt something shift in her mind like a door opening. They were human, she whispered. The speakers. The ones who built the temple. They were human. That is insane, Taeyang said. But he did not sound like he disbelieved it. He sounded scared, is it? Threnix gestured at the texts floating in the air. Your species has always been strange. You spread faster than any other species. You adapt to any environment. You learn languages more easily than you should. What if there is a reason? What if humans were not always the primitive species you think you were? Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Commander Yunseo's voice came over the intercom. All personnel, battle stations. Veltheron warships have entered the system. They are demanding we leave immediately or be fired upon. This is not a drill. Threnix grabbed his data device, his scales flashing with fear. I must go. If they find me here, I will be executed as a traitor. But please keep searching. The truth is buried in those ruins. And I think it is a truth the galaxy needs to know. He hurried out of the lab, leaving the 3 humans alone with their impossible discovery. We need to tell the commander, Hajun said. Tell her what? Taeyang asked. That humans might have built an alien temple 200,000 years ago. That we might have seeded the galaxy with life. She will think we have lost our minds, but what if it is true? Jiwoo stared at the Earth's coordinates floating in the holographic display. What if everything we think we know about human history is wrong? The ship shuddered as its engines powered up for departure. Through the window, Jiwoo could see the temple complex growing smaller below them, its secrets still locked in stone and shadow, but she had started to unlock them. And somehow she knew this was only the beginning. The ship had barely escaped the Veltharan blockade, jumping to hyperspace with seconds to spare. Now they floated in the dead space between systems, waiting while Ambassador Salar negotiated with her own government to give them more time. The Veltharan diplomat had been sympathetic but firm. Her people wanted answers, and they wanted the human research team gone. Jiwoo stood in the cargo bay, staring at the one artifact they had managed to bring with them. It was a crystal, roughly the size of her fist that Taeyang had found in the temple's inner sanctum. The crystal pulsed with a soft light that seemed to come from deep within its structure, like a heartbeat frozen in stone. You should not be alone with that thing, Hyunwoo said from the doorway. The security chief crossed his arms, his expression concerned. Bora said it is giving off some kind of energy field. Nothing dangerous but strange. Everything about this situation is strange. I need to understand, Jiwoo said. She reached out toward the crystal, her fingers trembling. There is something in here. Something calling to me. Jiwoo, do not... But her hand was already touching the crystal's smooth surface. The cargo bay vanished. She stood on a hillside covered in grass, so green it hurt to look at. The sky above was blue, perfectly blue, with white clouds drifting like ships on an endless sea. In the distance she could see a city, but not the crude settlements of early human history. The city was beautiful, its towers reaching toward the sky like prayers made solid. Vehicles moved between the buildings, silent and graceful, and everywhere people walked. Humans. But they were different from the humans Jiwoo knew. They moved with confidence and purpose. They wore clothes of flowing fabric that seemed to shift colors in the light. And when they spoke to each other, their words carried power. She could feel it, the way sound could shape reality itself when spoken with the right intention. "This is not real," Jiwoo whispered. "This is a memory. A recording." "More than that," a voice said beside her. Jiwoo spun around and saw a woman standing there. She was tall and dark-skinned, with silver hair that fell to her shoulders. Her eyes were ancient, filled with a sadness that seemed to span centuries. "Who are you?" Jiwoo asked. "I am what remains," the woman said. "A fragment of consciousness preserved in quantum crystal. We left many such fragments behind, hoping that someday our descendants would find them, that they would remember what we were. What we had to do. I do not understand. When is this? Where is this?" "Earth," the woman said. 200,000 years before your time. We were not called human then. We had other names, older names, but we were your ancestors. And we were dying. The scene shifted. The beautiful city crumbled in seconds, consumed by fire that fell from the sky. Jiwoo screamed, but the woman held her arm firmly. "Watch," she commanded. "You need to see. You need to understand." The fire came from ships, vast ships that blotted out the sun. But they were not attacking. They were fleeing. And behind them, Jiwoo saw something that made her blood freeze. The stars were going out. One by one, entire systems vanished into darkness as something massive and hungry consumed them. "We called it the Void Swarm," the woman said. "An intelligence from beyond our galaxy. It does not think the way we think. It does not want what we want. It simply consumes everything. Matter, energy, even the fabric of space itself. We fought it for 1,000 years. We threw everything we had at it. And we lost. But you survived," Jiwoo said, tears streaming down her face. "Humanity survived. We made a choice." The woman waved her hand and the scene changed again. Now Jiwoo saw laboratories filled with equipment she could not begin to understand. Humans worked frantically, their faces desperate. "We could not defeat the swarm, but we realized something. The swarm targeted technological civilizations. The more advanced a species became, the more the swarm focused on them. So we decided to hide. Hide how? We encoded our knowledge into our genetics. We built temples and monuments on worlds we had seeded with life, places that would last until our descendants were ready to understand them. And then we reset ourselves." The woman's voice broke. "We destroyed our cities. We erased our technology. We used genetic engineering to lock away our higher functions, to make ourselves primitive again, and then we returned to Earth and went to sleep in the caves, waiting for evolution to wake us up slowly. Safely." Jiwoo felt sick. "You sacrificed everything." "We sacrificed our present to give the future a chance," the woman corrected. "We calculated that if we disappeared, if we became primitive humans living in small tribes, the swarm would ignore us. It would move on to other galaxies, leaving ours alone. And in that time, new species would evolve, new civilizations would rise. And when they did, they would find what we left behind. They would have time to prepare for when the swarm returned." "Returned?" Jiwoo's voice was a whisper. "It is coming back?" The woman nodded slowly. "We bought the galaxy 200,000 years. We hoped it would be enough. That the younger species would grow strong. That they would learn to work together. That when the darkness came again, they would be ready." The vision shifted one final time. Jiwoo saw herself standing in the temple, speaking the words of the god tongue. And she saw the crystal pulsing with light, recognizing human DNA, activating protocols that had waited for millennia. "You are waking up," the woman said. "Not just you, all of humanity. The memories we encoded are starting to unlock. Soon others will be able to do what you can do, speak the old languages, access the knowledge we left behind, understand the technologies we hid." "Why now?" Jiwoo asked. "Why is this happening now?" The woman pointed upward. In the vision sky, Jiwoo saw stars beginning to flicker and die at the galaxy's edge. "Because the swarm is early, our calculations were wrong. It is returning now and the galaxy is not ready. But you can help them prepare. You can wake up humanity fully. You can show the other species that they are not alone, that they have allies who know how to fight this enemy." "I am just one person," Jiwoo said desperately. "I am just a linguist. I do not know how to save a galaxy." "You are more than you know," the woman said, and she smiled sadly. "You carry the dreams of a species that chose extinction over surrender. You carry the memories of those who walked among the stars when your ancestors were learning to make fire. You are a speaker, Jiwoo, and the galaxy needs you to speak." The vision shattered like glass. Jiwoo collapsed in the cargo bay, her body convulsing. She could hear voices shouting, feel hands grabbing her, but she could not respond. Her mind was full of images. Memories that belonged to people who had died before recorded history began. Languages flowed through her consciousness like rivers finding new channels. Veltharan, Kritik, Merekan, dozens of others she had never heard of. Her neural activity is off the charts, Bora's voice said urgently. She is having some kind of seizure. Get her to medical now. But before they could move her, Jiwoo's eyes snapped open. She sat up, her mouth moving, words pouring out in a dozen different languages. Warning. Danger. Awakening. The same message repeated over and over in every tongue spoken in the known galaxy. Hyunwoo stumbled backward, his hand going to his weapon. What is wrong with her? Doyun, the quantum physicist, was scanning the crystal with his equipment. His face had gone white. The artifact. It is a data storage device, quantum encoded. It has been feeding information directly into her brain, bypassing her conscious mind. It is like downloading an entire library into her head all at once. Taeyang grabbed Jiwoo's shoulders. Jiwoo, can you hear me? Come back. Please come back. Jiwoo's eyes focused on him. When she spoke, her voice was her own again, but it carried weight it had not had before. I saw them. Our ancestors. I saw what they did and why they did it. Taeyang, we are in danger. All of us, the whole galaxy. And we are running out of time. The cargo bay doors opened and Priest Calveth strode in, Ambassador Saylar close behind him. The old Veltharan had been allowed aboard for the negotiations, though Hyunwoo kept a careful eye on him. Calveth had witnessed Jiwoo's collapse on the security cameras. Now he stared at her with an expression that mixed fear and wonder. I felt it, he said quietly. When you touched the crystal, I felt something. Like a voice in my mind speaking words I could not quite hear. What are you? Jiwoo met his eyes. I am human. Just human, but my ancestors were more, and they left me a message. They left all of us a message. She stood, her legs shaking but holding. Priest Calveth, your first ones were not gods. They were people. Human people, and they gave everything so that species like yours could have a chance to live. Calveth's scales went pale. That is impossible. That is heresy. That is the truth, Jiwoo said, and whether you believe it or not, we need to prepare. Because the enemy that destroyed my ancestors is coming back, and this time we all face it together. The dust storms on Velthara 9 had finally cleared after 3 weeks of waiting. Jiwoo stood at the entrance of the massive temple complex, her breath catching in her throat despite having seen it a dozen times before. The structure rose from the rust-colored ground like a sleeping giant, its dark stone walls carved with symbols that seemed to shift in the dying light of the system's twin suns. It's bigger than we thought, Taeyang said beside her, his scanner beeping steadily as it mapped the interior chambers. The ground-penetrating radar shows at least 15 levels going down. Maybe more. Jiwoo nodded, her fingers tracing the air inches from the nearest wall. She had been studying dead languages for 12 years, ever since she left Earth to join the Frontier Archaeological Corps. She had decoded Krithik burial texts, translated ancient Saro dialects, even managed to piece together fragments of the lost American tongue. But these symbols were different. They felt familiar in a way she could not explain. Have you sent the images to the database? She asked. 3 days ago. Nothing came back. Not even a partial match. Taeyang adjusted his equipment pack. The Veltharans are not happy we are here, you know. Commander Yun Seo received another message this morning. They are calling this place sacred ground. Jiwoo had heard the stories. The Veltharans were the dominant species in this sector, their empire spanning 40 systems. They were tall beings, their bodies covered in scales that shimmered between blue and silver depending on their mood. They claimed these ruins belonged to their mythological first ones, the gods who had given their ancestors the gift of intelligence and technology. Every species has creation myths, Jiwoo said, though her voice lacked conviction. We have to document what is here before anyone can claim it. They moved deeper into the temple, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness. The walls were covered in the strange script, flowing in patterns that reminded Jiwoo of water or wind. There were pictures, too, carved in panels between the text, figures that looked almost human standing among stars, ships that curved like wings, a massive sphere that might have been a planet or a sun. Jiwoo, come look at this. Tai Yang stood in what appeared to be a central chamber. The ceiling soared above them, disappearing into shadow. In the center of the room stood a pillar of black stone, perfectly smooth except for a single panel of text at eye level. Jiwoo approached slowly, her scanner recording every detail. The symbols on this panel were different from the others. More deliberate, more careful. She leaned closer, her lips moving silently as she tried to parse the meaning. And then, without thinking, she read them aloud. The words came from somewhere deep inside her, flowing like a river that had finally found its course. The sounds were complex, full of tones and rhythms that her throat should not have been able to produce. But they came easily, naturally, as if she had spoken this language every day of her life. Taeyang, did you hear? The sound of something heavy hitting stone made them both spin around. A figure stood in the entrance to the chamber, silhouetted against the light from outside. As Jiwoo's eyes adjusted, she saw it was a Velthurin, but not just any Velthurin. The being wore robes of deep crimson, and his scales had the silvered look of great age. In his right hand he held a staff topped with a crystal that pulsed with soft blue light, or rather he had been holding it. The staff now lay on the ground at his feet. The Velthurin stared at Jiwoo with wide eyes, his mouth slightly open. Behind him more figures appeared, younger Velthurins in simpler robes, and behind them, Commander Yunseo with 3 members of the security team. Priest Calveth, Yunseo said, her voice tight with tension. We were told you would not arrive until tomorrow. We would have met you properly. Silence, the old Velthurin whispered. His eyes never left Jiwoo. What did she say? What words did the human speak? I do not know, Jiwoo said, her heart racing. I was just reading the inscription. I did not mean to offend reading. Calveth moved forward, his steps slow and careful as if approaching a wild animal. You cannot read. No one can read. That is the God tongue, the language of the first ones. It has been dead for 10,000 cycles. Our greatest scholars spend lifetimes studying fragments, and even they can only guess at meanings. I do not understand, Jiwoo said. I just looked at the symbols and the words came to me. Like I already knew them. Calveth bent down and picked up his staff with shaking hands. He pointed it at the pillar. Say it again. Speak the words again. Jiwoo looked at the inscription, and again the words flowed from her lips, clear and confident. She did not know what they meant, but she knew they were right. The pronunciation, the rhythm, the emphasis, everything felt perfect. The old priest's scales shifted from blue to pale silver, a color Taeyang had told her meant shock or fear. Calveth turned to his followers and spoke rapidly in modern Velthurin, too fast for Jiwoo's translator to catch everything. She heard the word impossible several times. Commander Yunseo, Calveth said finally, switching to the common tongue that most species used for trade and diplomacy. You will stop all work at this site immediately. Your people will pack their equipment and leave this world within 2 days. Priest Calveth, with respect, we have authorization from the Galactic Archaeological Council. This site is on an unclaimed world. This site belongs to my people, Calveth said, his voice hard as the stone around them. It has always belonged to my people, and you bring an abomination here, a creature that speaks with the voice of the dead gods themselves. This is blasphemy, Jiwoo felt anger flare in her chest. I am not an abomination. I am a scientist. I am trying to understand. Understand? Calveth laughed, but there was no humor in it. Child, you speak a language that no living being should know. You pronounce words that our holiest texts can only approximate. Either you are some kind of cosmic miracle, or you are something far more dangerous. He looked at Yunseo. 2 days, Commander. After that, I will bring the fleet. The old priest turned and walked out of the chamber, his followers hurrying after him. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Taeyang cleared his throat. So that could have gone better. Jiwoo looked back at the pillar, at the symbol she had somehow read perfectly. Her hands were shaking. What is happening to me? Yunseo stepped closer, her expression serious. I do not know. But we are going to find out. Come on. We need to document everything you can read before we have to leave. Something very strange is going on here, Jiwoo, and I think you are at the center of it. As they left the chamber, Jiwoo glanced back one more time. In the beam of her helmet light, the symbols on the pillar seemed to glow faintly, as if responding to her presence. She shivered and followed the others out into the red dust of an alien world. not knowing that she had just spoken words that would change the galaxy forever. The fleet that gathered in orbit around Earth was unlike anything humanity had seen before. Ships from 40 different species hung in space like a forest of metal and light, their designs ranging from the elegant curves of Veltheran cruisers to the geometric blocks of Krithik haulers. It was the first time so many galactic powers had come together in centuries, and they had come to the birthplace of what might be the galaxy's oldest civilization. "This feels wrong," Tae-Yang muttered, as they stood in the transport heading down to the surface. "Having aliens examine Earth like we are some kind of archaeological curiosity." "They are not examining Earth," Commander Yunseo said. "They are examining our history, and maybe learning their own history in the process." Dr. Kyung-soo was waiting for them at the landing site in Turkey. The Earth-based archaeologist looked like he had not slept in days, his eyes bright with exhaustion and excitement. "You were right," he said before anyone could even greet him properly. "About all of it. Once we knew what to look for, once we started applying the dating techniques you suggested, everything changed." He led them to Göbekli Tepe, the ancient temple complex that had puzzled archaeologists for centuries. But now, with advanced scanning equipment borrowed from the Veltherans and Krithik, the site revealed secrets that had been hidden for millennia. "Look at this," Kyung-soo said, pointing at a holographic display of the underground structure. "We always knew Göbekli Tepe was old. We dated it to around 12,000 years. But that was just the top layer. Underneath there are levels going down, and down and down. The deepest structures we have found so far are over 180,000 years old." "Impossible," one of the Veltheran scientists said. "Humans were not capable of such construction at that time. Your species was barely using stone tools." "That is what we thought," Kyung-soo agreed. "But the evidence does not lie. And it gets stranger. Look at the materials used in the deep structures. Synthetic polymers, nano-engineered ceramics, energy storage cells that still hold a charge after nearly 200,000 years. This was not primitive construction. This was advanced technology deliberately buried and disguised to look like ancient stonework." Jiwoo knelt beside one of the excavated sections. Her fingers traced symbols carved into the synthetic stone, symbols she recognized from the temple on Velthara 9. "These are instructions," she said, reading aloud. "A map. They are telling us where to find the other sites." Over the next 2 weeks, the joint expedition traveled to location after location across Earth. Underwater ruins off the coast of Japan that proved to be launch facilities for spacecraft. Structures buried under the Antarctic ice that turned out to be massive data repositories. Cave systems in South America that contained genetic engineering laboratories still intact after millennia. "I do not understand," Minji said as they stood in one of the Antarctic facilities. The human historian had spent her career studying ancient civilizations, and everything she thought she knew was being rewritten. "Why bury all this? Why not pass the knowledge down through the generations?" "Because they could not," Jiwoo said, accessing a data terminal that had awakened at her touch. The screen filled with text in the proto-tongue, and she translated as she read. They calculated that the Void Swarm would detect any advanced civilization within their galaxy. The only way to hide was to completely eliminate all traces of technology, all evidence of advancement. They had to make humanity so primitive that we would not register as anything more than animals. "But they left these sites," Envoy Krax observed, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "They left the knowledge hidden but recoverable. They called it the Preservation Protocol," Jiwoo continued reading. "They encoded crucial information into the human genome itself. Not in obvious ways. Not in sequences that would be detected by casual observation, but buried deep in what we call junk DNA, waiting to be activated by specific triggers." Dr. Kyung-soo pulled up genetic scans on his portable display. "We have been analyzing human DNA from the excavation sites, comparing it to modern humans, and we found something extraordinary. Modern humans carry genes that are not found in the ancient samples, genes that appear to suppress certain abilities, cognitive abilities, linguistic processing, pattern recognition. It is like someone deliberately made humanity dumber." "They did," Jiwoo said quietly. "They made us forget on purpose. They made us simple so we could survive." The data terminal displayed more information, and Jiwoo's breath caught. "There are activation codes here. Genetic triggers that can unlock the suppressed abilities in modern humans. The process is not instant. It takes time for the brain to adapt, to integrate the new neural pathways. But it is possible. Any human could potentially access the ancient knowledge, could become a speaker like me. We need to try this, Commander Yunseo said. If the Void Swarm is truly returning, we need every advantage we can get. We need to wake up humanity. They chose Sung Min as the first volunteer. The communications officer was young and brave, and she had worked closely with Jiwoo since the beginning of this journey. In the Antarctic facility's medical bay, with Bo-Ra monitoring her vital signs and Do-Yun managing the equipment, they administered the activation sequence. How do you feel? Bo-Ra asked as the process began. Strange, Sung-min said. Her eyes were closed, her body relaxed in the medical pod. I can feel something in my head, like doors opening, like remembering a dream I did not know I had forgotten. The process took 6 hours. 6 hours during which Sung-min's neural activity spiked and fell in patterns that made Bo-Ra nervously watch every reading. But when it was done, when the young woman opened her eyes, they were different, clearer, more focused. Sazerath Vel Moranix, Sung-min said in perfect Veltharan. Then she switched to Krithik, then to Maricon, then to a dozen other languages, speaking each one as if she had known it since birth. It worked. Oh stars, it worked. I can feel them. All the memories. All the knowledge. It is like I have lived 1,000 lifetimes. How many humans could we process? Yunseo asked Kyung-soo. The facility has enough equipment to handle maybe 20 at a time. If we replicated the technology across Earth, perhaps thousands. But we would need time. Months at least. Maybe years to properly awaken significant numbers. We do not have years, Jiwoo said. She was staring at a display showing astronomical data. Do-Yun, can you confirm these readings? The physicist moved to her side, his face growing pale as he studied the information. These are real-time observations from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. Stars at the galactic edge. They are not just dimming. They are disappearing, being consumed by something that spreads like a stain across space. The Void Swarm, Jiwoo whispered. How long do we have? Envoy Krax asked. Do-Yun ran calculations on his tablet. At its current rate of expansion, it will reach inhabited space in approximately 8 months. Maybe less. The silence in the facility was absolute. 8 months to prepare for an enemy that had nearly destroyed the galaxy 200,000 years ago. 8 months to awaken a species that had been sleeping for longer than recorded history. 8 months to unite a galaxy that had never truly worked together before. Then we start now, Matriarch Silvara said. She had arrived on Earth 3 days ago, watching the excavations with a mixture of fascination and horror. Now she looked at Jiwoo with something like respect. Your ancestors gave us the gift of intelligence. They gave us time to grow and develop. Now we must honor that gift by standing with you against the darkness. Priest Calveth stepped forward, his scales bright with determination despite his age. The Veltharan hierarchy will contribute its resources to the awakening process. We will help build more facilities. We will help spread the word to other species. And we will help humanity remember what it once was. The Krithik Collective agrees. Envoy Krax clicked. We owe our existence to ancient humans. It is time we repaid that debt. One by one, the representatives of the gathered species pledged their support. Ships, resources, scientists, soldiers, everything they could spare to prepare for the coming war. Jiwoo stood at the window of the Antarctic facility, looking out at the ice fields stretching to the horizon. In her mind, she could see the ancient humans who had built this place. She could feel their desperation, their hope, their faith that someday their descendants would be ready for this moment. We will not let you down, she whispered to ghosts that had been dead for 200,000 years. We will finish what you started. We will protect what you built. And we will show the Void Swarm that humanity does not stay down. We rise again and again, no matter how long it takes. Behind her, Tae-Yang was already coordinating with the engineering teams. Plans were being drawn up for mass production of awakening facilities. Volunteers were lining up by the hundreds, humans eager to unlock the potential hidden in their genes. And across the galaxy, other species were searching their own worlds for evidence of ancient human presence, for the gifts and tools that had been left behind. The awakening had begun. The question now was whether it would be enough, whether 8 months would give them the time they needed to remember how to fight an enemy that even their advanced ancestors had barely survived. Jiwoo, Sung-min called out.